Thank you very much for joining us here today. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity of having this webinar today focused on how to export food and beverage from Bulgaria to China. We will be focusing on how to export food and beverage products into the Chinese market. And in order to do so, I would like to leave the floor to my colleague, David Lavorel, Business Advisor for EU SME Centre. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Davide. I have many things to say, so I will jump right in. So today's presentation will be 7 big parts. I will first talk about the main regulatory constraints before exporting to China. I will insist a bit more on what is called CIFER, which is a database on which foreign companies need to register to in order to be able to export. I will talk a bit about labeling because things are changing in China. Then we will look into actually exporting and distributing the different options that are available for SMEs. I will insist on intellectual property, on the challenges that you might encounter here in China, on the ways that are available to avoid issues. And then we will have a bit more fun, let's say, by talking about how to promote your product after you have gone all the regulatory stuff. And I will end the presentation with some general advice and tips on how to do business in China. So let's go right in the regulatory constraints. The first thing you need to do when you export to any country, but to China in particular, is to look at standards, the local standards, and to make sure that your products are compliant with the local standards. Of course, most of them exist for quite a while. Most of them are identical to ISO standards, but some of them are slightly different. This is what they are known as deviation. So we need to always be careful about that. Most of them are not new, but from time to time you have new ones. For example, last month, the China National Health Commission published a bunch of 32 new food safety standards. So of course, not all of them will be of concern, but you never know. And in this case, there is one about the maximum levels of contaminants in food. So that might be of concern to some company. And another one is about milk and milk products. So this is always something to first look at and then have an eye on it all the time. The second important aspect is bilateral agreements. Many agriculture and food products need to fall under bilateral agreements. It's often called a protocol before starting any registration procedure, any ways to access the market. Usually it concerns products that are considered as kind of high risk or sensitive by the Chinese authorities. Many are already in place when it comes to Bulgaria and China, and you have the list on the slide. If it's not on the slide, it does mean that there is no active agreement protocol, but most probably some of them are under negotiation. So I strongly suggest to get in touch with the authorities in order to know what are the negotiations that are ongoing and if it's of interest to you. And it also gives an idea about the timeline where you can envision to sell your product. This is especially true in the Bulgaria case because your Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Tahov, was in China last May, I believe, and I saw in some news report that some agreements were discussed. So, as I said, like for most of the countries, this is a topic of high interest when it comes to trade of agriculture and food products. So there are negotiations all the time, and you need to be aware of them. The second important part is the CIFER. So the CIFER is a specific database of the customs, the Chinese customs. It was put in place early 2022. It got quickly very bad press because basically the tool was not ready, so there were lots of bugs, and many people, including European companies, got a bit crazy about it because the system crashed all the time or rejected the application. But nowadays, this is perfectly fine. The process is very straightforward. But of course, like any official forms, especially when it's online, it could be a bit, let's say, daunting. But no worries. Nowadays, it's pretty simple. I will go into some details in a moment, but at this stage, uh, keep in mind that it's bilingual, so you don't need to know Chinese to fulfill the form. And about 200 Bulgarian companies have already been through the process and have successfully got through it. So no worries, it's not a mission impossible, far from it. So what is CIFER? This is an acronym, and it's supposed to mean China Import Food Enterprise Registration. It's slightly misleading because it's not only registering a company, but also product. This is something that everybody needs to do. That is to say, if you produce, manufacture, or store food and beverage products that will be exported to China, you absolutely need to register on this database. You have on the screen the address, the web address. This is the only one valid. Do not register on any other website. This is completely free. So if you, by mistake, log onto another website and it asks from you some money, switch off, go away. This is not the right one. Inside the system, you have basically two procedures. One is about what the Chinese authority called high-risk products. You have 19 categories of them. It's a process that needs to involve your home authorities a lot. Here, it's the Bulgarian Food Safety Agency. It's usually a quite long and difficult procedure. Quite often, it means that you will have on-site audits by the local authorities, but sometimes even by the Chinese authorities. So it's a quite complicated and long procedure. And then you have the rest that is considered as low-risk products. And for this, is pretty simple. This is self-declaration. This is what you do, you alone. And you just basically fulfill forms on the website. So now the question is, where is my category falling into? So here you go. You have the list of the high-risk categories. This list is Chinese list, but it's not only for Bulgaria or not even only for Europe, because you can see some products that Europeans, as far as I know, never export. For example, bird's nest. This is not something, as far as I know, that European countries are exporting. But basically, these high-risk categories are the one for which a bilateral agreement is needed. There is, of course, as usual, some special cases. And for example, in terms of Bulgaria trade, Rosa Damascena feed and feed additive, they do not fall under this process. They have their own specific procedure, and everything is explained very clearly on the website of the Food Safety Administration. And here you have a couple of details about it. So the procedure is quite simple. You create an account where you put details about your company. this is the things that you need to be very careful about, because these are the different information that you will not be able to correct later. So if you make a mistake, for example, in the spelling of the name of the legal representative, you will not be able to correct it later. You will need to restart. So be very careful when it comes to the information that you import, that you input in the platform. And then you have to fill some information about the product, about the ingredients, about the different suppliers that you rely on, etc., and so on. And then after everything is done, you touch on go, and the file will be reviewed by the General Administration for Customs here in China, and most probably you will get approved. Because this is a very simple procedure, very routine. Of course, if in your case the production structure is quite complex with many establishments, for example, to produce a specific topic, some of the ingredients are sourced elsewhere, or you are not sure about who is the manufacturer because you go through a trading company, of course, it adds complexity on the risk of rejection and actually time to fulfill the different questions that are asked from you. Of course, for some products, you will ask to download, to upload some documents. You might not have them on hand when you do the procedure. No problem. You can save where you are in the procedure, and then go look for the right document, and for example, the next day, continue the registration. So you don't need to do it in one go. You can do it step by step, as much as information that you have available. You input them, and then you can come back to it later. I will not give much more detail about this now, because we have guidelines explaining everything in detail, and I strongly suggest that you have a look at it before starting your registration, because then you will have a good sense of the information that is required of you, and then you can prepare the said information and to avoid starting the registration, stopping, getting the information, starting again, and so on and so forth. It is, of course, available on our website. You can download it for free. You are quite lucky as a Bulgarian, because you have also quite comprehensive documentation in Bulgarian available to download on the Food Safety Administration website. So please do it. You never have enough information when it comes to fulfill forms, official forms. And for this, Chinese forms are not, unlike other countries, they can be a bit challenging. So this is the way to do. In the report, you will get a very thorough explanation about how you should do it now. But of course, in China, things are changing, and you will hear me say this sentence quite a few times during this presentation. Sometimes it's not a welcome change, but sometimes it's a very happy change. And in this case, a couple of months ago, the Customs published an amendment about CIFER. And as usual, when I see a new amendment, a new regulation, I'm gasping a bit and getting a bit scared, but no need here, because for the different product that you see on your screen now, the procedure is kind of simplified. For those, you have to make a commitment. This is a new section that is on the website. And basically, there is a list of commitments, and you have to tick beside each of them. And these commitments are quite simple, are quite usual. It's a self-declaration saying, for example, that, well, you are complying with the laws and regulation when it comes to food production of your home country. You never had any big issue related to food safety. Your product are compliant with the Chinese standards, the Chinese mandatory obligation when it comes to food and safety. And of course, you commit to cooperate with the Chinese authorities if they need additional information, if they want to know more about, say, your food production or your ingredients. You will be very happy, most probably, to cooperate with them and to clarify, any things that they want to know. So this is for the first part. The second part, it's also a big simplification. You can see again a list of some products. And for those, you don't need to fulfill the section related to HS code and CIQ codes. It seems to be very simple, but in the past we had loads of issues with that. One of the reasons is that HS code are supposed to be harmonized. It stands for harmonized system, but when it comes to China, it's only partially harmonized. The first 6 digits of the code are the same in China as elsewhere in the world, but not the last 2 ones. So in many places, in many ways, for many products, there were some confusions. And of course, the denominations can be also slightly different. So it leads to many rejections of products, complaint from companies having fulfilled everything in good faith and facing rejection, complaining to the administration. And finally, the custom administration came to their senses and decided that this administrative problem did not need to exist. So they basically scrap the need for inputting HS code and CIQ code. So as you can see, the products are quite numerous. There are still a few products that need HS code, some kind of vegetable, for example, but most of the products no longer need such code, and it makes things very, very easier. So, as I said, and I will say again, things are changing in China quite often. And last week, the General Administration for Custom decided to publish a new decree, the Decree 280, and it will come in force in 2026 on June. So the first thing you need to know that it replaces the Decree 248. And what is this Decree 248? Well, this is the decree that is the basis for everything we just reviewed. Everything related to CIFER, to the registration, to homologation of product, everything was from this decree. So a big change again, but for the best, because when you look at it, you study it, and you see that you have an overall simplification of the registration process. The decree actually integrates some of the changes that I mentioned. This is a simplification philosophy. But also, as a symbol of this simplification, there is, for example, the automatic renewal of the registration. Up to now, when you register your company or your product, the registration was valid and still is for 5 years. And between 6 and 3 months before the end of the registration period, you needed to renew again your registration. This obligation has been basically scrapped. We understand that then the renewal will be quasi-automatic. Of course, if during the period your product had a number of difficulties, for example, if you have your product blocked at customs with some issues at custom a few times, if you had some, I don't know, some issue with food safety related to your product, when it was commercialized, well, then most probably the renewal will be not automatic, and you will need to fulfill and to go to a specific procedure. Of course, China being China, not everything is clear for the time being, and we expect some additional regulation to clarify some of the things. For example, in this decree, there is a mention of a catalog of imported foods requiring official recommendation. Nobody seems to know exactly what that means. It's most probably related to the high-risk category and how the administration of the origin of products will be involved in the homologation process. So far so good. We are going towards simplification all across the registration of food and beverages product. So let's have a look at labeling now. In the report that I mentioned about registration, you have a big section on labeling and packaging. It describes in detail what you should do, all the mandatory standards you need to be compliant with in terms of labeling, in terms of packaging. But again, at the risk to be repetitive, things are changing in China. And since March, we have a new regulation. Of course, it will not come into force now or in the near future, but quite soon anyway, because it will be from March 16, 2027. This new regulation, basically, it's a bunch of new safety standards. You have 50 of them. Again, most of them will not be of concern for you on your product, but at least two are, I think, key. The first one is the 7718, and it's the general rules about labeling. It's an update of the previous one that was published in 2011, so quite a while ago. And the second one is the 28050, and it relates specifically to nutrition labeling that needs to be put on the prepackaged food. So the idea is this is not something you need to do now, but you will need to be compliant with the standard from March 16, 2027. So best practice would suggest, sorry about that, best practice would suggest to integrate already all these requirements because they are more stringent rules than the one that exists now. So then you will not have to worry about it, say, in a year when it comes to your production process and labeling process. So what are the main changes from these new rules on labeling? So first of all, is lead to simplification and clarification for the customer. This is what is in the mind of the authorities when preparing this document. So we have seen a new term, its expiration date of shelf life. What that means is now you need to put a specific date for the end of life shelf. Until now, you needed to put the production date and to state a duration, for example, 6 months or 8 months. So for the customers, they needed to calculate, okay, it's written, it's produced in March, plus 6 months, it's September, and now we are August, so it's fine. So in order to avoid for the customer to calculate by itself, it's okay to buy the product, now you need to put it very clearly. After this date, you should not sell this product. Of course, going hand in hand with that is the standardization of the date format. Until now, you had different options, and then you will have only one, it's year, month, day. A big changes that you will need to integrate is related to nutrition, and now additional information is mandatory. Until recently, until now actually, it's what they call the 1+4. You need to put very clearly on the label the amount related to energy, protein, carbohydrates, and sodium. And nowadays, you need to add up two more. And this is saturated fat and sugar. And another obligation is to write, in Chinese, of course, children and adolescents should avoid excessive intake of salt, oil, and sugar. This is, of course, very specific, I mean, the sentence for China, but you probably have seen this or a very similar statement that needs to be put on the label in the other countries as well. Another important thing that will need to be on the label is allergen. If there is any, it needs to be stated clearly. Before it was only recommended, now it's mandatory. And of course, you have also a few, let's say, specifics about the font size of the different elements that you will have to write, depending on the size of the label, for example, but you will find all the detail in the regulation. There are a few other changes. For example, in the way that some ingredients may be presented. For example, and it's more related actually to marketing rather than the actual content. So, for example, to write no sugar added will be normally forbidden, because if there is no such product, no need to mention it. This is the thinking behind this new aspect of the regulation. Also mentioned in the new regulation is what they call the digital label, and this is the idea that on your label you will have a QR code that you will be able to scan with your smartphone and then access to a special page with specific information about the product. So it's there because then it will be a legal base to do things about it, but we do not have any information about what should, could, would be available that way. Most probably, it will be additional information or not all the mandatory stuff that we have just seen. So let's now have a look at two examples where you can see two things. First, on the left, you have a bottle of wine behind the label, and you see this thing, CIFER 23 blah, blah, blah. This is actually the magic number. This is the result of all what you have done so far. This is what you hope to get after the registration on the CIFER database. If you are successful, you will get this magic number. I will not go into the details how it works. Be aware that the first is always C normally. On the second, third, and fourth letter, it's the code about the country. In this case, it's an Italian one, and it's coming from Italy. Then okay. You will have details about this code and how it works in the report that I mentioned. And of course, you can see the label in Chinese with the different information that is mandatory on the labels. For example, here you have the importers, and for example, with this address, you have different dates that need to be there. On the right, you have another example. This is chocolate. And you see again label put in it with, again, here maybe it's a bit small, with the said code, what I usually call the magic number. And then again, you have the C and DEU, which stands for Dutch. It's German chocolate. One bit of information or notice on this. you still have your original labels on the bottles. It is not forbidden in China to have information in a foreign language on your product, but you need to have in Chinese a lot of information, and you can, like in these cases, have your label and glue on it. They don't care if it's written in Russian, in Arabic, or whatever. So for them, as if you have the information that they ask for, it's okay. This is quite useful because it makes it easy in terms of production management. You just need to add up a label on the products that will go to China, and it makes it very simple. For example, when it comes to bottling, for example, you do not need to have a very specific change on your production line. So let's go into now the different ways for exporting, because if everything went smoothly, you have now been officially registered and approved, and you can actually start to export. So there are two main ways to enter the Chinese food and beverage market. There is a general trade. This is also what is known as a traditional way of doing things. And you have the cross-border e-commerce, which is a bit weird stuff that we have here in China. This was an experiment started almost 10 years ago now by the Chinese authorities, seeing how the population was interested by e-commerce. So each way has its advantages and disadvantages, and we will go through some of them. So for the general trade, like I said, is pretty much like you do for all the other countries. You need to find an importer or many importers. You need to find distributors. Sometimes they are actually the same company, and you work with them closely in order to make your footprint and to expand your footprint in the market. To do so, you need, well, all the things that we have reviewed so far. You have the need to have the manufacturer registration. This is the famous magic number. You need to be compliant with labeling. This is also what we saw. And for some products, not all, some products, you need some specific evidence of registration. This is especially valid for everything related to health food or infant formula. So here we are in a very common and well-known territory. It's pretty much like everywhere else. One of the challenge, of course, for products coming from Bulgaria is that nowadays everyone wants to enter the Chinese market, and importers and distributors are, let's say, not overwhelmed, but almost by proposals. And of course, in this situation, they tend to choose to import and represent companies and products who they think will be very quickly successful and will make them a lot of money very quickly. And when the product is not already very famous on the Chinese market, they might be reluctant to spend a lot of efforts to make it known because they will have to allocate a lot of resources in terms of human resources, marketing, human resources, and the like, with no guarantee of success. So we can imagine then that they are reluctant, and in this case, this is also where to exhibit at a fair here in China could be interesting, because then you will be approached by distributors that are more ready, let's say, to take risks on products that are more entrepreneur in a way, or more focused on some specific niche market. Nonetheless, it will be clearly a challenge because, as I said, everyone wants a piece of the Chinese market. And then you have the cross-border e-commerce. So what is this thing? It's not the traditional, so to speak, e-commerce that we know. That is to say, you cannot sell your product. You cannot expect Chinese people to order product from your website, for example, or from a website that exists in Bulgaria or in Europe or anywhere else. You need to go to some specific e-commerce platforms, and I will give a few details in just a second. But for this, it's a kind of, let's say, marvelous situation because you have a list that is called a positive list. And on this list, you have about 1,500 items. On most of food and beverage items are on the list. If my memory serves well, I think it's 436 food and beverage products that are on the list. And for those, well, you don't need anything in terms of registration, MANIC number, or whatever complicated stuff that we just saw. You don't need any of that. You just need to be on the positive list. Of course, there are a couple of exceptions for sensitive product, let's say, that you will need to be careful about. And then you have two possibilities, is to import via bonded import or direct shipping mode. Direct shipping is pretty straightforward. When you receive an order, well, you ship it directly to the person that ordered it. And for bonded import, it means that you need to send basically containers to a special zone, and then when an order comes, it will be taken from this zone and then cleared at the customs at the door. And in terms of how to sell it, to distribute it, you can open by yourself a store, or you can place your product in an existing store. And then it's pretty much the virtual approach of the real life approach. Do you choose to open a store under your name where you have only your products, or are you okay for different reasons to have your product side by side with others? So this is very interesting, and especially considering that all the procedures that we have seen are quite comprehensive, quite time consuming. So for many companies, it seems to be extraordinarily simple, but of course, it's not exactly the case. So one of the, let's say, drawback of these schemes is the consumer have a limit on the things that they can buy in terms of quantity. An individual from China can normally not spend more than 3,300 euros via these platforms. It sounds a lot of money, but in this amount of money, you have everything, not only food and beverage. Whatever product, whatever items that exist on the list, 1,500 items, and then you find that very quickly you get to the maximum number. And then, well, they cannot buy your products. For example, if they love your product and they want to renew and buy again, they will not be able to do so. So there will be, let's say, a limit. Of course, there are ways around that. You ask your spouse, your friend, or whatever, but clearly you have some limits. So one of the advantage of this system is actually to test the market, to see if there is a demand for your product. It's a bit tricky because, as you can imagine, on the Chinese e-commerce platforms, you have hundreds of thousands of shops. So it's a big fight to be seen and to be recognized and appreciated by the customers. So I mentioned about the platform. What are they? You have two main e-commerce platforms, which from the beginning got the authorization by the authorities to do basically to sell imported products directly. The first one is Tmall Global. You might have heard the name because it's part of the Alibaba Group. Alibaba Group has two main platforms when it comes to e-commerce. It's Taobao. On Taobao, it's only in China for Chinese, and it's basically anyone can sell anything to anyone. And they have another platform, but that is available on the same app, same app. It's Tmall, where it's more like a B2C model, where you have official stores by brand, typically, or big shops, that sell to customers. And then you have the other one, JD.com, otherwise known as Jingdong. They also have a module that is authorized to deal with cross-border e-commerce. It's also doing the same business as Tmall. It's also an app, an app. And you will have noticed that I do not say website. It's because nowadays in China, most of the people access internet not by using a computer, but on their smartphone. So for all these platforms, they have their own application where well, the customer buy and pay, everything is integrated. This is something you have to keep in mind, especially when it comes to marketing and communications. Customers and potential customers, well, they look at a very small screen, even if nowadays some smartphones are quite big with big screen, it's still very small. So you need to think about it when it comes to marketing and design of the communication online. Of course, this is just a very brief overview. You will have loads of information available in our dedicated report, Selling to China via Cross-Border E-Commerce. That is, again, available on our website. There is one specific thing you need to right away look into is the list of products that can be sold via cross-border e-commerce. So there is an annex, the list of the 1,476 products with the HS code that are allowed to be sold this way. So I strongly recommend you to read this report. You will understand better what are the different platforms. You will also notice on our website that we have done some webinars recently about it in order to keep you updated on the latest change in this field. So after having giving you a brief overview of these different elements, it's time now to talk about a sensitive topic in a way. It's IP rights. Most probably, you have one, possibly more trademarks protected in Bulgaria, quite possibly registered in the EU or maybe elsewhere. Well, in China, that offers you zero protection. You need to register your IP right, and especially the trademark, in China. And this is something you need to do right away. Before coming to China, before talking to anyone related to China, this is the thing you need to do. And I will give you briefly an overview on the topic. And the following slides are prepared by the China IP SME Helpdesk, which is another project that is financed by the European Union, a kind of sister project of ours. So here we go about IP in the food and beverage sector. So first, a quick recap on what are the IP. You need to register your IP, otherwise, basically, you don't have one. and it's territorial. As I mentioned, if you have an IP right in Bulgaria, it's not valid in China. And in China, there is a principle that is the first to file principle. In other words, the first person that apply for a trademark will be the one getting it. They don't care if the trademarks belong, the brand belongs to the person or not. It's the first one who does it, who gets it. It's led to a lot of what we call bad faith IP registration. It's basically people looking around saying that, oh, this foreign company in such and such country has a potential in China. It seems that they are interested by China. So let's register their brands. And then they will have to negotiate with us and to basically buy back their own brand to us. And this was and still is a business of some not great people, let's say. So, of course, there are ways to get it back, but it's quite complicated or costly or both. One way, as I said, is to basically negotiate with the guy who did it in bad faith. Another way is to start some legal procedure, but clearly this is not something you want to do before having done anything on the Chinese market. So know before you go, do before you go. So do register your trademarks before anything else. I strongly, again, recommend to look at the website of the China IP SME Helpdesk. They have loads of information, very practical guidelines on what to do, what not to do. And they have a very specific guide related to the food and beverage industry. And one of the first things you need to do, most probably, is to do an IP audit. And they have a specific tool to do this, and it will give you some pointers on what you should do and when you should do it. So I mentioned trademarks, so you need to register it way before entering the market. You have basically two ways to go about it. One through what we call the Madrid system. Basically, it's done in Europe. It's part of the European system. It's a check you have to do in the application for different countries. Or you can do it in China. There are advantages and disadvantages for the two procedures. Again, it's related to China doing things a bit differently. So it could lead to some issues. It's a bit like the HS code that I mentioned earlier. So please do talk to your IP lawyer after having get acquainted with the issue with the document of the help desk in order to make sure that you do not have any issue when it comes to registering your product in different classes. Of course, copyright exists in China as well, and I will not go into details about that. You will have plenty of documents on the website. It's not only about trademarks. You have also design patterns that can be used, and it's potentially very interesting when it comes to packaging. If you have a quite special packaging, this is something you really need to look into. But of course, sometimes if the design is original, you cannot register it here. You can probably use the copyright way to protect it. There are also some kind of new IP rights that are now valid in China. Those are geographical indication. This is something quite interesting in China, especially from a marketing point of view. And I will get back to this idea in just a moment. And of course, the trade secrets, and it could be interesting when it comes to protect, for example, your recipes. But what you have to keep in mind for trade secrets is that you should be able to demonstrate that you did some very special efforts to protect your trade secrets. It's not just to say, oh, I didn't sell this to anyone. No, you need to be able to prove that you put in place a number of procedures to actually make sure that your recipes, for example, are kept secret. I would not say much more on this now. Again, please do look at their website. They have loads of very useful information. They have also the option to have an appointment with them. They have a lawyer in-house that can be very much of help for your very specific question that you may have. And of course, you can send them some question by email as well. So now we have seen that your product are registered. You know how to distribute your product to make sure that if someone wants them, they can be delivered. You have protected your IP rights, so you are very comfortable now to promote your product in order, well, for the customers to know that they exist. So how to go about it? Well, and it's linked to what I said just now. Most probably, you will need a brand in Chinese or Chinese brand because most probably you do not have one yet. Uh, you have different ways to do so. You can, like some companies do, basically do a transliteration, you basically use phonetics based on your existing brand, or you could also create a brand new trademark in Chinese. The key here is you should do it. Do not wait, because if you wait, some others will think about it and you and will create one. So this is not necessarily something that you want. You need, of course, to be careful about it. You do not want to be in a position where the name you have chosen in Chinese sounds great for your ears, but when Chinese people hears it, he will laugh, for instance. So this is not necessarily what you want from as a reaction from your brand. So of course there are some specialized consulting companies able to help you with that. And this is something you need to be very careful about because it will be key for your marketing and communications later on. And when it comes to communication and marketing, social media is key here. Of course, you might say that it's key everywhere these days, but it's especially true in China. And again, I will come back to this in just a few seconds. Event marketing, well, this is something you know, of course. Retail promotion when it comes to brick and mortar shops, for example. Online shopping festival, this is something quite known elsewhere. Black Friday, for example, in the US and now even in Europe. But here, it's way bigger than that. And it seems that it's almost every week that there is an online shopping festival. And this is also, I just want to point out here that this is something you need to be very careful about. Many times, if you are on a platform, you might be, how should I put it, pressured by the platform to offer some big reductions in price in order to attract buyers and to attract attention on the platform as a whole. This could be interesting because normally that translates in a big number in terms of sales. But as I said, there are a lot of shopping festivals, so you do not want to be put in a position where people are getting accustomed to have the very low price that you put when there are these shopping festivals. You do not want to have a customer buying your product only when you offer a promotion on that. So this is something that you need to keep in mind. But anyway, it's part of the usual strategy, price strategy that you need to design. Of course, do not take things for granted. In China, the taste is different. Even within China, you have huge variation in terms of taste. Knowledge gap, of course, I'm sorry to say, but almost no one here knows where Bulgaria is and what are the products from Bulgaria. So you will need to do a lot of efforts to train your importers, to organize some testing, to make some video tutorials. This should not be that surprising. This is the case when you export, even for example, in South America, you need to do pretty much the same thing as well. One specific aspect you could consider is if your product is from a place where there is an official geographical indication, have a look at the EU-China agreement to make sure that your GI is part of this agreement, because this is something you can put very visible in your communication, because the Chinese authorities have been promoting this geographical indication aspect for their own products for quite a few years now. And it's very much linked to high quality, to food safety, to authenticity. And this normally are some values that you want to be attached to your own product. So do not hesitate to push the communication on this aspect. It's always useful, and especially in China, where there is always a kind of worry about quality and safety of the product. And last but not least, customer services and after-sale service. This is again something that is quite common. When you choose the normal way of exporting, most probably it will be the responsibility of your distributors, for example. But when it comes to online, it's a bit more specific. And how specific is that the Chinese customers are used to contact the shops, the e-shops, at almost any time of the day or of the night. And they expect answer very quickly. Typically, the question might be simply about the availability of the product, about the expected date of delivery, for example, especially if the option is to send it directly from Bulgaria. So they will want to know more about how long it takes to get the product that they want to buy. But sometimes it's question about ingredients, about how to use the product. Even though the information might be available, written, or included in a video on the description of the product, they like to chat, to talk, and to ask questions, and at any moment. So again, most probably you will need to rely on a dedicated third party for that, especially considering that there is a time difference between Bulgaria and China. That being said, all the different elements that I just listed are pretty much valid everywhere in the world, with some specific adjustment, let's say, coming to China. But when you are an SME, you do not necessarily have millions and millions to spend on this different aspects. And of course, your marketing, your communication, everything depends on your budget, on your goals. But as a SME, as a general rule, as you are not so rich yet, you need to practice what I call the kind of guerrilla marketing. That is to say, using whatever means necessary as soon as they are not very expensive and they can be useful. It means usually low-key means, quite easily accessible, but that can be quite profitable. So one of the first things you need to think about is to what is called piggyback on existing events. There are quite a few events organized here in China that you can be part of. I say this under the watchful eyes of the representative of the consulate of your country. But I'm quite sure that the Bulgarian embassy, the Bulgarian consulate, for example, during the National Day, is organizing a cocktail, is inviting quite a few VIPs, being official, people from the art and culture scene here. And it's a good moment to promote your products then. You could be a sponsor to this event by bringing typically your product there. And this is one way to have access to a soft target. It means people who are invited by the Bulgarian authorities to an event most probably are already a bit familiar with your country, with its culture, with its culinary habits. So it's kind of a soft target that you can tap into. This is also something you might want to think about in Bulgaria. As you probably know, many Chinese are visiting Europe, and quite a few are visiting Bulgaria. So you could try to target those as well. Usually, it's quite possible to find who is organizing the trip. It's most of the time the same companies, which hotel are they in, and it's often possible to organize some kind of testing, for example, at the hotel, something that could be quite informal. For example, if you do, I don't know, jam, that could be served and put it prominently during breakfast, for instance. Sometimes, depending on what you do, for example, if you are a winery, it could be possible to integrate in the trip of the Chinese group, well, a visit to the winery and a testing. These are things that we have seen organized in other countries and seemingly quite successfully. You could, of course, target what I call existing networks. For example, in China, there are a few universities that teaches Bulgarian. So again, if you have Chinese studying Bulgaria, they are, should I say, a soft target when everything linked to Bulgaria comes in. They can also be quite helpful to understand better the market, to come across issues related to languages, for example. Imagine you come to China, most probably you will want to have an interpreter. And these are not people that you find everywhere when it comes to Bulgarian Chinese interpreters. And many times you might want to hire, for example, the professor, the teacher, or the brightest student that can help you navigate the city, the country, the culture, and the like. So, of course, you have on the other way around some Bulgarian students in China that can also be helpful in understanding, let's say, different cultural barriers. But I suspect that there are more Chinese in Bulgaria than Bulgarians in China. And again, in Bulgaria, talking about Chinese, you have quite a few now, and they could be very interesting interns, for example, helping with marketing research, for example, because if you want to have a look at the different platforms that I mentioned, well, everything is in Chinese. So, of course, you can use some translating tools and copy paste a few keywords, but then it will be a challenge anyway. But you could explain what you want to a Chinese intern, and then it will be way easier to get the information you're looking for. And quite possibly, a Chinese student in Bulgaria could be, again, I say could, emphasis on the could, give some, let's say, insight when it comes to social media. And I will develop this just now. So, social media, what are we talking about here? In China, it's of course very important, like anywhere else. But here, everybody is using their smartphone, whatever the age, from very young kids to seniors, everyone, whatever social background, wherever they live in China, they spend hours and hours watching it, reading it, and the like. Of course, when I say this, I can almost see you saying, okay, he's a funny guy, but this is the same in Europe. But the difference is most of the activity that you have probably developed on the main platform, say Instagram, Facebook, and the like, it's a bit like the intellectual property rights that I mentioned. It's of no use here because most, if not all, the international platforms are forbidden in China. So in China, you basically cannot access Instagram, you cannot access Facebook. All the platforms are no-go. So it means that you will need to be familiar with the Chinese social media and develop a presence there. Some of the principles are the same. Social media is social media. But here, let's say, the legal framework might be quite different. And I will, in a few seconds, develop a bit about it. But I strongly recommend to watch the webinar that we did a few weeks ago, and you have the title on your screen, From Click to Customers. And there you will have a detailed explanation about who are the actors, the different resources that you need to be successful on it and to make it, let's say, a very useful tool. Again, this is something that could be challenging to do if you are an SME, and there are companies specializing in doing just that, opening accounts, helping you, providing specific dedicated content for this platform, and even more important, getting views, getting visibility for your presence, for your product, and then hopefully to transform a simple click into actual sales. So let's have a quick look at some social media. They are quite specific for many of them these days, as they are transforming themselves a bit into e-commerce platform. They started as a classic social media, and then they started to basically monetize their members onto what was exchanged on the network by doing e-commerce. One of the most popular these days is Xiaohongshu, known in English as the Little Red Book or Red. You have many ways to describe it in English, but it's Xiaohongshu. It's now more than 10 years that it was created. It started basically as a social media focusing on fashion, but very quickly grown up, and now is, let's say, quite popular for everything that is fashionable. Well, you find it there. And this is the reason why many people log into it, look at it, and you have different options in order to make everything easy when it comes to buying the different products that are shown by your favorite idol on the platform. The second one is Douyin, which is the parent version of TikTok. So it's pretty similar, but it's completely disconnected from TikTok. There is no crossover there. It's also very, very popular. It's mostly videos, of course, and it also has the same features, that is to say, the possibility to directly buy during the live stream, the live session that you are watching. And there is another one which is a bit specific that is called the WeChat, or known also here as Weixin. This is a kind of super app with which you can do pretty much everything, from paying your bills. For example, if I have to pay my electricity bills, I can do it through the WeChat. There is a special module about how to pay your utilities. You have also the possibility to post articles, videos, and images. And one of the interesting feature of this is you can target basically only your contacts. So typically, if, for example, I present a video of myself again eating a Bulgarian jam and saying how great it is, all of my contacts who will see me doing this will have automatically a higher trust in the product rather than to see someone who they don't know doing the same thing. So in this sense, WeChat is a very interesting channel, but also a very complicated one to get familiar with for a foreign SME. But again, there are companies able to help you with that. So, having talking about some of the platforms, I would like to say a few words about two examples on Douyin, so the mother company, mother website of TikTok. And here on the slide, you have example of a lady living, a Chinese lady living in Bulgaria for more than 20 years now. And you can see some of the different videos that she posted. Something pretty classic for social media, that is different videos on her daily life, let's say, of the different things that she visited and that she sometimes ate and tried. And one of the things that is interesting that you can see on the top here is this 3.9. It's actually 39,000 followers. So it's quite a lot for a single person. It's basically then not only her family, but many, many, many others that are curious about how is it to live in Bulgaria and the different things that you can come across when you are Chinese living there. On a second one, again, also a Chinese lady in Bulgaria. This one is, let's say, less popular. She has about 2,500 followers, which is quite a lot. It's clearly more than extended family. And here she also described her daily life in Bulgaria. And typically, this kind of profile is often chosen by Chinese SMEs who want to promote their product. They could do like other big Chinese company, that is to say, finding a key opinion leader, a KOL, who has already 1 million followers, but the person will ask for a lot of money to do so, to introduce the product. So if you are an SME, being Chinese, Bulgarian, French, or whatever, by essence, you do not have loads of money. So one way to go about is to deal in a way with these, let's say, small influencers. And often, at least when it comes to Chinese SMEs, they are able to find some kind of agreement with this person. And typically, if I continue with my example of the jam, here you have here the husband of the lady preparing the breakfast for their kid. So we could imagine having a pot of jam and him preparing the breakfast of his kid with the jam and the brand very visible, and the kid saying, of course, truthfully, that the jam is fantastic and this is the only jam that he wants to have for breakfast. So, of course, these are just a bit wild ideas, but this is something that we see very often in China. SMEs everywhere in the world are facing the same issues or come up with ideas to market their product in a very competitive environment and where everything, every penny is important. So after these couple of examples, I would like to give you a few more general advice about broad recommendation, let's say, about how to do business in China. So one of the important things to have in mind is to know the market. You will not be surprised if I tell you that China is big, that you have many different regions with different players. You have loads of competition, and you need to know about it before designing your own market access strategy. And one way to know the market is to attend or to exhibit at a fair, at a specialized fair. You have quite a few when it comes to food and beverage in China, and we have a list of the main ones. We have, by the way, just published a report on trade fairs in China with not only the list of the main fairs, but also many advice and recommendation on how to act, what to do or not to do before, during, and after exhibiting at these trade fairs. So it's very important to think about attending or exhibiting at a trade fair. This is also, and I insist on this, if you decide to do so, make sure that you have already protected your IP rights and especially trademarks. You don't want to come with, for example, samples or documentation and having not already protected them, because then you are looking for trouble. And when I say coming in China, you can come pretty much whenever you want, because nowadays, if you are Bulgarian, you no longer need a visa for a short stay, that is to say less than 30 days, and for whatever purpose. So it's quite easy nowadays to program a trip here in China. Of course, you need to design your own strategy because otherwise you have the risk to waste your resources and to be not as efficient as you could be. You need to be very careful about the different regulation on the many changes that may occur. I hope that I convey the idea that things are changing quite often when it comes to regulation in China, so you need to be careful about it. If you choose, let's say, the traditional way through an importer, most probably it will be the importer informing you of the coming changes in the regulation. But if you do not choose this way of doing, you have to be aware of that and to keep an ear about the regulation. Of course, China is special. If you come here, everybody that you will meet will say that. So the answer is, at least my answer, yes, it is special, but not so special. And many of the things that you usually do, you should continue to do it. Typically, when it comes to relationships with partners, whatever kind of partners, you need contracts. And here you need contracts that have been written or at least reviewed by lawyers who know China and the Chinese laws. This is imperative, and this is the source. If you don't do it, you will have loads of issues. Of course, you will meet many people, especially at the beginning, who will tell you, well, I don't know you, you don't know me. Let's first do some business. Let's make some money, and then we will formalize our relationship. No, do not do that. You can have some contracts that makes the option possible to get out of it quite easily, or to, let's say, integrate the evolution and the relationship. So go with the contract all the time. And when it comes to partners, again, whatever kind of partnership, please do some due diligence about them. You can have a due diligence when it comes to their financial, their legal status and the like, but also from a commercial standpoint. Typically, if you meet someone who explains to you that he can introduce you to many chains of supermarkets very easily, well, take it not as his word, but ask him, okay, I'm here. Please organize, for example, for tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, a visit to one of the places that you just described. And we will go together, and then we will be able both to verify that they're interested by our product. And if he suddenly says that, well, it's complicated, I need 2 months to organize that, it might give you a clue about its actual value. So, having said all of that, you might have understood that China might be complicated for an SME. It's not impossible, far from that, but it's, let's say, challenging. So, generally speaking, I consider that it's not the right country to first export if you have no experience when it comes to exporting products. I believe that if you have never exported before, you should rather consider the European market. It's way easier when it comes to regulation, way easier in terms of everything, basically, even in a few months when it comes to currency. So if you are a first-timer, please think carefully about exporting where you want to export. And this is basically what I wanted to say today. I just want to repeat once more that on our website, you will find loads of information related to food and beverage market here in China, many reports, guidelines, webinars, but also a few case studies that is European companies explaining what they did, how they did it, the challenges that they faced, and we have quite a few in the food and beverage sector about some specific, for example, distribution ways that were chosen, but also experience when it comes to e-commerce on opening, for example, e-store and the challenge that might come with that. And again, if you do not find the information you are looking for in the website, you have the option that is called Ask the Expert to ask question or to book an appointment to have, let's say, an exchange, a live exchange via Zoom or Teams or whatever, with an expert, in-house expert that we have here. Thank you very much for your attention.